Now, we'll take a look at another sample problem called sanitizing an object. In this problem, we'll be working with a JSON object. To explain what a JSON object is, it is a dictionary of values that can be either primitive types, arrays, or object. And to explain what primitive types are, these include data types such as integers and strings. So as an example, here we have a JSON object that has a name key with the value of Marcus, another key called age with a value of 26, another key called pet names that has an array of pets named, and lastly, an employer key that has a value of object type that in itself is another JSON object. And what we want to do in this problem is that given an object, we want to replace any instance of the password with a sanitized string. In other words, we have a function called sanitizedObject that accepts the parameter object, a password phrase, and a sanitized string. And whenever we see the password phrase in this object, we want to replace it with a sanitized string. Now let's take a look at an actual example. Here we call the sanitizedObject function with any object, but with the value of corgi for the password parameter, and with this asterisk for the sanitized string parameter. And then let's say that we have this JSON object called the user that has all these information about a user. And then we want to pass this user object into sanitized object function call and clean up any instances of the string corgi with this other string of asterisks. And if we were to scan through this object, we see that the phrase corgi shows up multiple times. First, it shows up in this key of password, and it has the string corgi. And once again, within this key of dogs, the string corgi shows up again as one of the values here. Lastly, the string corgi shows up here, which is nested under the key of veterinarian and then the key of dogs. And once you pass this JSON object, what we want to have is to have this value of password replaced with this string of asterisks. And once again, the string of corgi underneath the dogs key is also replaced with this asterisk string. And lastly, the string of corgi under the veterinarian and dogs key is also replaced with the asterisk key here. So now let's ask what we need to think about here. The first thing that we need to think about here is given a string, how do we swap out the password for the sanitized string? For example, the string a corgi bit me, we want to swap this string with the other string where a asterisk bit me. In a lot of languages, the string comes with a method called replace or something similar that would allow us to change the target word with another replacement string. If the phrase target is not existing, then even calling this replace method should result in no op. Another thing to watch out for is if this replace method does not mutate the strings in place within your programming language, then what we need to do is to make sure that you assign the replace string back into where it belongs. Another insight that we can have here is that if objects only have primitive types, it will be much easier. For example, let's say that we have a simple object with the name value of corgi, address value of 123 Corgi Lane, and age value of 5. Then what we can have for a solution is to say that for each value in this object's values, check if the value is a string type. If that is the case, call the value.replace and try to replace this password with the sanitized string. However, this won't work in all cases. This is because JSON object can contain non-primitive types such as arrays and object in which we need to recursively nest into to look out for any other instances of password phrases. So now let's look at an implementation where we update our solution where we also look out for those other cases. So in this updated solution, the first part is still similar. Basically, we're saying that if the object is a string, then we want to replace the password string with a sanitized string. And remember, we're assuming that if the string does not contain a password instance, then this replace method call will result in no op. For the next case, we'll check to see if the object that was received is a data type of array. If that's the case, then what we do is we'll iterate through each value in this array and then pass this array into sanitize object function recursively. Lastly, we also check to see if the object is of type object. If that's the case, we'll get each value in the object's values and then also call the sanitize object recursively. And that's it. This is our solution to sanitize our JSON object. While we just went through a sample solution, this solution can actually have a real-world use case. There are various functions out there that follows a similar pattern. Here we see a function called camel case keys that turns the keys in the object into camel cases. And as we look at the solution, we see that it also handles the different types of data types and then calls the camel case keys function recursively.